Who doesn't love going to the beach? The air is warm, the smell of suntan lotion is everywhere, and ooh, the sights. And playing in the waves is good fun, unless they look like this. Giant waves. They are beautiful, awe-inspiring, scary, and sometimes deadly. We're going to take a look at the spots around the world where these waves form and why, and then take a look at the crazy people that risk their lives to ride them. You don't want to miss this. It is crazy. The first place on the list is the American state of Hawaii. Located in the middle of the Pacific Ocean, it is ground zero for big wave action. In the winter months, large storm systems form in the northern Pacific and send giant ocean swells racing toward north-facing beaches of the Hawaiian Islands. Those same storm systems, as they move across the Pacific towards Canada and the Pacific Northwest, send swells toward California. Across the Pacific Ocean in the southern hemisphere lies the island of Tahiti. It is a haven for storm-generated waves in the winter months that come screaming up from the south from May to October. And then there is Portugal, where winter storms in the Atlantic offer up swells, and the underwater Nazaré Canyon, one of the largest in the world, helps fuel massive wave action, which we will explore later. You don't want to miss that. The allure of big waves has drawn people to the ocean for a long time, and the idea of riding those waves gave birth in Hawaii. Ancient Hawaiians called it he'enalu, which translates to wave sliding. They carved out wooden boards from sacred trees like koa or wili wili and rode the waves to display their strength, skill, and bravery.
You know, through the 40s, 50s, 60s era, that whole idea of free surfing. So that existed thousands of years ago. They embraced a traditional way of life. They rearranged it to fit their lifestyle.
These wooden boards were nothing like the surfboards of today, which are mostly made from fiberglass. These were massive planks that measured over 16 feet long and weighed as much as 150 pounds. Surfing stayed primarily a Hawaii thing until Americans started occupying the islands in the 20th century. Eventually, Southern California, with its miles of sand, sun, and waves, adopted the surf culture. The world took notice in the 1960s when Hollywood started making surf movies, like the Gidget series.
How old are you?
I happen to be much older than I look. You wouldn't believe it, but
I sure would.
And surf bands like the Safaris and the Beach Boys became popular. A documentary called The Endless Summer followed two surfers around the world in search of the perfect wave. The sport of surfing took off and has never looked back. But there are waves, and then there are giant killer waves. It's one thing to ride a 5 to 10 foot wave, and quite another to try and tackle waves that are 20 to 100 feet high. Back in the beginning, when these giants showed up, the surfers stayed on the beach, unprepared to handle those beasts. The idea of trying to ride them just seemed insane. But eventually, the daredevils couldn't handle it anymore. They had to try. They worked on surfboards to make them more manageable, experimenting with different sizes and weight. They trained like warriors, practicing to hold their breath for minutes at a time and mastering underwater survival techniques. Because when you wipe out on a 60-foot wave, it is all about survival. The force of these waves are staggering.
When the lip hit me, it felt like a building was falling on me. And I knew right away that I was probably in for the most violent beating of my life so far.
A fall can bury a surfer under a 100-ton wall of water that is churning like a giant washing machine. Equilibrium is lost, and the force of the wave can keep someone held underwater for what seems like an eternity. Even the most calm and prepared surfers have lost their lives battling these big waves. A prime example of this was in 1994, when legendary surfer Mark Fu tragically lost his life while in a surf competition in California. It was a tragic reminder for the surf community that even the most seasoned surfers aren't invincible where these giant waves are concerned. Now, let's take a look at the exact locations where you can find the most incredibly massive waves in the world. And trust me, if you've never seen waves like these in person, then you need to put it on your bucket list. It will make you feel puny and small. Just watching these giant waves can be frightening. Let's go back to Hawaii, where it all started. The north shore of the island of Oahu has 3 prime locations: Sunset Beach, the Bonsai Pipeline, and Waimea Bay. In the winter, this is a hotbed of surfing activity. People come from all over the world to hang out here. The most unique of these surf breaks is the Bonsai Pipeline. The waves may not be as huge, but they form a cylinder that engulfs the rider. Getting barreled is the ultimate goal, as the surfer disappears in the wave and then gets shot out of the end. Unlike true big wave surfing, this type of wave requires more precision, but it can be beautiful to watch. The actual birthplace of big wave surfing is Waimea Bay. It's the first place where surfers paddled out to tackle the giant winter swells. Eddie Aikau was a legend. He was a local lifeguard and pioneering surfer who helped start the sport of big wave surfing. Eddie's fearlessness inspired generations. In fact, there is an annual big wave surf contest that is named after him.
The opening ceremony for one of the world's most prestigious surf events kicked off today at Waimea Bay. But will the Eddie go?
But Eddie's story, unfortunately, had a tragic end. In 1978, during a voyage on a traditional Hawaiian canoe, Eddie paddled off alone to seek help after the canoe capsized. He was never seen again. As we move down the island chain, we get to the island of Maui, where we find a surf break so immense that no one surfed it for ages because there was no way to paddle into the wave. This is Jaws. An aptly named break that chews people up and spits them out. Waves come thundering into a rocky shore, and when they break, the sound and fury is immense. Its waves easily reach between 30 to 80 feet in size. It's probably the fastest, heaviest, and largest wave in the Pacific Ocean. The underwater volcanic terrain plays a huge role here, as old lava flows have created steep drop-offs in the seabed, which help amplify incoming swells. Surfers discovered that the only way to get into these waves was to be towed in by a jet ski. Once this was figured out, there was nothing stopping thrill seekers like Laird Hamilton from attacking these ferocious beasts.
Let's talk about the Jaws.
Yeah.
I mean, you were the first one to ride that, correct?
The thing is that place was an unsurfed place. I mean, I think people will go, oh, well, we paddled out there and thing, and no one was surfing that spot. Whether they had been out there before, like on the side looking at it, or they went out on a small day and rode it. But what allowed us to pioneer that break
Now, let's go back to California, to a spot just south of San Francisco called Mavericks. This is the location where Mark Fu was lost. It is a wave that is cold and intimidating. It is not your typical beach break. This monster forms far offshore, where a rocky seabed and icy waters create waves that can soar over 60 feet high.
The storm led to perfect conditions for professional surfers to ride giant waves at Mavericks. Dozens of surfers were out in the water near the Half Moon Bay this week. Some of the waves hit nearly 60 feet, according to the surfers.
Surfers who take on Mavericks face frigid temperatures, strong currents, and the memory that one of their own perished here. The only people tackling these waves are serious professionals.
Mavericks is an amazing wave. It's scary as hell. It's like running 100 yards as hard as you can, looking over a 4-story building and then jumping off.
Let's get out of the cold and back to the tropics for a visit to Tahiti and the famous break Teahupo'o. It is one of the most awe-inspiring yet deadly surf breaks on the planet. In 2000, legendary surfer Bryce Teria lost his life here. It is known for its crystal clear, barreling waves, but these waves form over a razor-sharp coral reef, making even the slightest mistake potentially life-threatening. Surfers who conquer it often describe the experience as a mix of terror and exhilaration. Having a wave drag you across knife-like coral does not seem like a good option.
Just go out, straight out, straight down, straight toward a coral reef that's now about 6 feet deep.
Our last stop is in Portugal, where we discover the Widowmaker in Nazaré. It earned the nickname because of the countless lives it has taken. These waves are some of the largest ever recorded, and many professional surfers have faced serious injuries here. In 2017, Andrew Cotton fractured his spine after being wiped out.
Anda bomba. Anda bomba.
This spot holds the record for the largest wave ever surfed when Garrett McNamara famously surfed a wave over 100 feet high, putting this small fishing village on the global map.
All right, joining us now is the man who took on that gigantic wave, Garrett McNamara. And Garrett, what were you thinking when you were on top of that 100-foot wave?
Standing on the coastline, watching these massive waves the size of a 10-story building roll in is a jaw-dropping experience. There are very few people on the planet who would dare try to surf these waves. Yet every year, when a monster swell rolls in, people try in hopes of breaking McNamara's record.
And I actually really enjoy the situations, whether it's getting sucked over by an 80-foot wave or you know, going in to pick up my friend in a really dangerous spot. Just deal with it.
For most of us, these waves are just another amazing aspect of the planet we live on, and we aren't crazy enough or skilled enough to tackle them. But we hope that you like this video, enough to subscribe and see what we will discover next about this awesome planet we call home.